And we're also having blood drive. That should also have blood drive. Red Cross blood drive.
Ready for you.
You're ready? It's been a while.
Questions fired up?
Check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me, Sheldon Larkey? You can hear me. Good. No. You can't hear me. You can hear me? It's not good? Raise it up a little. How about now? Better? Great.
Red Cross. So there was a group, which, of course, when I was there, all that had ended, so they accepted donations from everybody. It was run much more efficiently. So that was just a local group, and very efficiently. How come you're not in the garrison? Why are you here in Matthew, Carolina?
It's a long story, but a short answer, right?
March, maybe?
At least a couple of weeks.
No, you're not counting tomorrow.
Do you want him on a separate line?
Oh, that's not fine.
The last time we did that, we
I'm trying to read yours.
O-N, I know. O-N.
B-R-D. Okay.
So we were at the federal building. We were at the federal building. The old federal building where they stayed.
Not here.
I know where it was.
The next 3 Mondays, Dr. Bergman, supposed to should register. I've already attended some of those very entertaining.
What's that?
You're near Sioux Falls, something like that.
I grew up in Sioux City, Iowa. I went to college in Sioux Falls, South
I
Dakota.
saw that on the map. Good things about the cities. Sioux Falls, Iowa.
Yeah, nice. I'm into that. Welcome back. How was it?
Like the best place to talk.
I saw pictures of it here. Just covered your bases. There you go.
The art performing here.
Oh, good, thank you. That's always a plus. Although, I don't know,
All right, everyone, we're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. If you want to grab something to drink, something to eat, maybe grab a book, this will be a good opportunity.
Thank you. You have a little color in there, what that means. 5 minutes ago. And then I just came back from Maytag. Fantastic. Whatever. I was telling them, don't give the books away for free. Wonderful.
Nobody ever likes to sit in front.
I'm sitting here.
Okay, I'll sit here
Semi-front.
too. Or I'm sitting behind. Okay.
Just help me.
You're in the water, I thought. Lark.
He has a brother named Sheldon.
I know.
Let's have zero characters. I went to school with a gentleman by the name of Butch. That's close.
Yeah, well,
He doesn't go by Butch anymore. I went years ago, 15 years ago. Janice sounds familiar. So, where did they go?
Originally from Detroit. Potomac, Maryland. To Hilda, did your son stay with you today? Did he stay here?
yeah, he's here until Sunday.
It was a big deal.
Yeah,
It all.
anything to bring them home.
You making the favorite meal tomorrow night?
Oh, yeah, Travis dinner.
All right.
And I never change the menu.
Better yet.
They count on it.
Better yet. So Yoni, is your wife gonna make you change all the clocks on Saturday and Sunday? Or
Yes.
you-
Yep.
That's your job?
Yep.
That's mine too.
It's definitely my choice.
Definitely. Every year. And then of course.
Which is great. That's great.
She was born in My wife is
Eating and drinking. One way or another.
We won, so we.
It's always an experience.
Hi everyone, just a quick announcement that we are on Jewish Standard Time, so we will be starting in a few minutes.
The biggest problem that is they accent the wrong syllable.
Everybody can.
Yes. I'm not sure. We played together. We went.
Oh, you brought your son with you? Hi, Rabbi. How are you? Good to see you. I'm a hero today. Why? Oh, yeah? Because my kids say that. My grandson's We're ready, Yoni.
Good to see you. How are you?
Hello, Doctor. I read up.
All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. How's the sound?
Loud.
Loud?
No.
Is it good? Okay.
Projecting.
Okay, very good. So please help yourselves. It's wonderful to see everyone. Thank you for braving the snow and the wind to come out and hear our speaker, Paul Hamburger, tonight. It was wonderful to see everyone. Louder? It seems very loud to me, but okay. Exactly.
I'll talk about it.
Anochi Hashem Elohecha Asher Hotzeti Me'eretz Mitzrayim Mibeit Avadim. I am Adonai, your God, who took you out of Egypt. With these words, God introduced the Ten Commandments. What exactly was God telling the Jewish people with his opening statement? The words are often translated as, quote, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of slavery. Understood this way, the sentence is a basic introduction to the fundamental guiding principle of this same God. Consider reading the words like this. I am Anochi. I am also Havaya. Moreover, I am Elohecha. And by descending through this process, I am, quote, the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt. This opens up the possibility of finding a different understanding of God's identity and process whereby his essence was revealed to this world. In the Anochi Project, Seeking God's Identity, Paul Hamburger analyzes all 141 references to Anochi in the Torah and finds a deeper understanding of how we can relate to God's essence and how God wants to relate to us. Paul M. Hamburger is a partner in the international law firm Proskauer Rose LLP. He is the author of numerous books and articles and a frequent speaker and teacher on employee benefit matters. Paul is on the International Advisory Board for Chabad on Campus International. He is an active member of the Chabad Shul of Potomac, Maryland, and is a founding charter member of the Congregation B'nai Tzedek in Potomac, Maryland. This is Paul's first book on Jewish text and philosophy. Paul and his family have a long history and deep connection to Congregation Shaarei Tzedek. Paul studied closely with Cantor Sidney Ruby, Zichrono Livracha, and also learned a great deal with and from Rabbi Erwin Groner, Zichrono Livracha. He is an alumnus of Shaarei Tzedek Hebrew School and USY, and for 8 years was the regular high holiday Torah reader at Shaarei Tzedek. Please help me welcome Paul Hamburger.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rabbi Dahlen, and I'm really thrilled to be here. As I said, it really is coming full circle for me because it's been a long, circuitous route. And I have my earliest Hebrew school teacher sitting right there, Mrs. Baruch, and, you know, what can I say? And, you know, my earliest memories from Shaarei Tzedek is when my grandfather would take me up after Shabbat services to see Rabbi Adler and introduce me. And I remember, you know, they had the tallis with all the little tzitzis and all the things. And he used to, like, dangle them in my face. That's my memory of Rabbi Adler. And actually, in the book, there's actually one citation to a Shaarei Tzedek rabbi, and it's actually Rabbi Hirschman, who preceded Rabbi Adler. And I have a book of his sermons, and he wrote just a brilliant talk on Jacob's Ladder. And so I refer to that in the book, and we can talk more about that later. So, with that, we'll get started. We do have books for sale, by the way. We have a certain number of books here for sale. And all of the money goes to a Shaarei Tzedek fund, TBD. I don't know, do we know? TBD. Minimum suggested donation is $20, but whatever you want to do, and 100% of the money will go to the fund. So there you go. None of it goes to me. What's that? And if you want to have your book signed, I will sign every single one of them. For everybody that buys a book, you got it. It's signed. It will be. Okay. So the book is about Anochi. And the word Anochi is what we're going to explore. So what I want to do first is I'm going to explain what this enigmatic word is all about. So we'll explore that a little bit. Once we understand the uniqueness of Anochi and what it is referring to, then I'm going to go through some of the stories that you are all familiar with in the Torah, where the word Anochi is prominently figured. And we'll learn how to read the stories in a different way and get a whole different new meaning out of the stories. And then, at the end, we'll talk a little bit about God's hiddenness, or hiding, if you will. Not hidden, but hiding is a difference. We'll talk about that a little bit, and where that comes from. And then I will tell a closing joke, anecdote, and we'll call it a day. Okay. So Anochi refers to God's essence. It's not a name of God. It refers to God's essence. So to really get this idea, you have to understand what a name is. What's a name? A name is limiting. Meaning, if you are this, you are not that. If I call you X, you are not Y. So to understand the difference between a name as an identity thing and an essence, this just came into my office the other day. My friend Ken Poser said there, you may have gotten this too. Our professor at the University of Michigan Law School, Whitmore Gray, was his name. Okay? And this came across, now this is one of these things, you know, there's an old saying, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So everything I see Anochi in everything now. So anyway, I see this write-up, and I said, this just happened the other day. And I said, okay, this is going to be in the talk. Here's why. Whitmore Gray. Who was Whitmore Gray? Whitmore Gray son, husband, father, grandfather, uncle, brother, educator, lecturer, linguist, professor of law, legal scholar, musician, patron of the arts, world traveler, mentor, and friend to many, died peacefully Sunday morning. Who was he? Any one of those names. Was he the son? Was he the father? Was he the brother? No, he was all of those things. But he was really none of those things. He was all these other things. Who was he? Okay? Which leads me to the one and only Anochi joke. There actually is an Anochi joke, believe it or not. So there's a famous joke. So this guy is searching for his identity. College graduate, let's say. Don't know what to do with myself. So where do I go? I go to India, of course. And in India, there are these mountains. And you go to the top of the mountain, and you can do whatever you're going to do. So this kid goes to the top of the mountain every day. God, who am I? Every day he's crying up on the mountain. Goes up, comes down, goes up. Who am I? God, who am I? So one day, he's up on top of the mountain, and he's particularly fervent. And tears are streaming down his eyes as he yells out, God, who am I? And at that moment, the sky opens up, and a voice comes down and says, who wants to know? That's the problem with identity. Who are we? Depends on who wants to know. Okay, so God has this same problem. Who is God? We have all these names for God. The Talmud says there are 10 names for God that can't be erased. Okay, great. Which one is it? Is he Adonai? Is he Elohim? Is he... We got all these names. But who is he? The names describe an attribute. The attributes are, of course, very significant. The name that we say is Adonai, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, that refers to God's infinite existence. The Elohim, which we'll talk about, refers to his finite existence or his finite appearance in this world. What is above infinity, though? Because you can't say God is infinite because that's limiting. Why is infinite limiting? It's not finite. So we need to understand what is above infinity. Rabbi Soloveitchik once framed it as a mathematical equation. Infinity plus finitude equals infinity. So it's that level of infinity that Anochi is referring to. Now, when I say it's referring, it is not a name. It's not a name of God. Names of God cannot be erased. You can write Anochi all you want. You can erase it all you want. You can say it all you want. And you are not saying God's name. And yet it's the opening line of the Ten Commandments. The very first word, God identified himself with Anochi. Okay. So let's understand this quality of Anochi. Imagine a painting. That's why there's a painting on the cover of the book. It's actually my wife's uncle was a landscape painter, and that's his painting. Imagine a painting. There is stream, and there's mountains, and trees, and rivers, whatever. Okay? The painting is a creation by a creator. Who's the creator? The artist. Okay. Where do you see the artist in the artwork? Where do you see the creator in that creation? Okay, you could tell maybe by the style or by the, whatever. But there's one place you can always see the artist in the artwork, and that's the signature in the corner. Why does the artist sign the painting? So you'll know who painted it. Wants you to know I painted it, right? Okay, if that's the case, why doesn't the artist plaster the name all over the painting? Then for sure you'll know. There'll be no doubt. The answer is the more revealed the creator, the more diminished is the creation. The creation cannot exist in the overwhelming presence of the creator. Okay, so why does he sign it? Why bother? The answer is he's hiding. He wants you to know, but he doesn't want to so overwhelm it that you won't search for him. He knows that if you look for him, you'll figure out who painted it. You'll learn more about the creator, and therefore appreciate the creation. Anochi is God's signature in the Torah. That's what it is. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the uniqueness of Anochi. The Midrash says Anochi is a word of Egyptian origin. And I've actually talked to an Egyptian professor and said, yes, there is a word like that, similar to the word Anach. Anach only appears one time in all of Tanakh, no pun intended. And it appears in Amos, and it refers to a plumb line, like an architect's plumb line. They have the thing to keep everything straight. So some suggest that maybe it comes from that. The Talmud actually deals with Anochi as an acronym. And I have a section on explaining what is an acronym and why is an acronym. And okay, it's more than we want to get into tonight, but we can talk about that later if you want. Now, Anochi is always translated as I. There's another word in Hebrew for I. What is it? Ani. Okay, so what's the difference between Ani and Anochi? I don't know how many Anis there are, I didn't count. But there are 141 Anochis, I know that. And there are a lot more Anis. So what's the difference? Ani refers to, I'll say, a lower level, a more humble level of the I. Ani has an ata. Ata is you. Okay? So if you have an ani, you have ata. If you have anochi, there's no corollary. Anochi is unique. Anochi is the essence of the individual. Malbim, famous biblical commentator, describes the difference this way. I'll give you a simple sentence. Ani yoshev al hakiseh. What does that mean?
Sit on the chair.
I'm sitting on the chair. Okay. Anochi yoshev al hakiseh. What does that mean? I'm sitting on the chair. Okay, so what's the difference when I use ani versus anochi in that sentence? And here's what the Malbim says the difference is. When you say ani yoshev al hakiseh, the emphasis is on the act of sitting. If you say anochi yoshev al hakiseh, the emphasis is on who is sitting, me and no other. That's the big difference. In fact, you can take the letters of anochi, aleph, nun, chaf, yud, and you can rearrange them, put the kaf first, and then it becomes ke-ani, like ani. It's like ani, but way different. William Wordsworth, the 18th century British poet, wrote a wonderful poem called The Mountain Echo. On observing an echo, he said, like, but oh, how different. Okay? So that is ani to anochi is like the voice to the echo. A couple of other unique, at this point, I'm going to get into another aspect of uniqueness of Anochi, but first I have to ask if anybody is gematria intolerant. Because if you are gematria intolerant, you're not going to like this part. But if the rest of you can bear with me, I don't know if they have pills for that, but gematria, of course, refers to numerological connections with Hebrew letters. So Hebrew letters have corresponding numbers. Aleph, the first letter, is a 1, Bet is a 2, so on and so forth. And so we see connections that are based in gematria. Now, to understand gematria properly, you have to understand there's two elements to every gematria. One is the math, and one is the meaning. The more complicated the math, the better the payoff better be. Okay? If you're going to make me add numbers and multiply and take the square root and divide by 2 or whatever, you lost me. The meaning is not derived from the math. The meaning is either there or it's not. The math can enhance our understanding. So we mentioned Elohim. The gematria for Elohim is hateva, nature. This is the aspect of God in nature is reflected in the word Elohim. Okay? Now it's not because it equals hateva. Okay? Why hateva? Why not just teva? Teva's nature. Because we need another 5 or it won't add up. But okay. So there's limitations on what you can make out of gematria. But the point is there's a message to be said. Here's another well-documented one, which is very interesting. In the Kaddish, we as the congregation respond, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach Li'olam U'Li'omei Al Maya. Right? 7 words, 28 letters. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz. 7 words, 28 letters, the opening line of the Torah. Before the 10 commandments are given, we say Vayedaber Elohim et kol hadvarim ha'ele lemor. 7 words, 28 letters. So, if you say Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach Li'olam U'Li'omei Al Maya with true kavanah, with true intent, you simultaneously connect yourself with creation and revelation. Wow. That's what gematria can do for you. Okay? Now, are there other sentences of 7 words and 28 letters? I'm sure there are. But if I just said, if you say this with kavanah, you will attach yourself to creation and revelation, you'd say, okay, that's nice. But when I can connect it with the gematria, it becomes much more interesting and much more powerful. So, that's the setup. Here's the payoff. There are 141 Anochis in the Torah. In all of Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, 150 Psalms, there are 13 Anochis. Okay. In the Torah, there are 56 in Bereshit, 56 in Devarim, 22 in Shemot, 7 in Bamidbar, none in Vayikra at all. Vayikra is only on 8. I explain why, but for now we'll just take that as a fact. Okay. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The gematria for Anochi is 81. It's in the 81st Psalm. 141 in the Torah, it's in the 141st Psalm. 22 in Shemot, it's in the 22nd Psalm. 56 in Bereshit, 56 in Devarim, 7 in Bamidbar, adds up to 119. And in the 119th Psalm, Anochi appears 3 times. Okay? When Abraham is negotiating over the Machpelah, he's in Hebron, and he's negotiating over Machpelah, he says, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem. I am a stranger and a sojourner. I'm a sojourner and a permanent resident with you. And what does that mean? And Rashi explains, and it's a very interesting concept to be both temporary and permanent. What he meant by that. Ger v'toshav anochi imachem. Here's what Psalm 39 says. Shema tefillati, listen to my prayers, God, and vishavati ha'azina, and listen to my cries. El dimati al techarash, don't disregard my tears. Why? Ki ger anochi imach toshav kechol avotai. We are a ger, a stranger, and a citizen in our relationship with God, the same way Abraham was a ger and a toshav with the people of Hebron. So there are connections to all of the uses in Tehillim to something deeper in Torah. It reflects an intentionality that is quite interesting, because if there was one more Anochi in either book, none of those things would exist. It was not by accident. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the stories. So that's the uniqueness of Anochi. So let's see how this plays out in the Torah. And we're going to start with one of the early, not the earliest use of Anochi in the Torah, but one of the early uses of Anochi. And the story you know is Cain and Abel. Cain killed his brother Abel, right? Now, along comes God. Not just any God, the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful God. And he says to Cain, Ei hebel achicha, where is your brother Abel? Okay, now, there were 4 people on the earth. He's the all-knowing, all-seeing, all-powerful God, and he lost one of them. Why didn't he pull out his iPhone? You know, on the iPhone you have like, where's my phone? Why didn't he pull out the app and say, where's my creation? He could find them. I guess he didn't have an Apple. Well, the Apple was in Garden of Eden. No, that was an Android. It wasn't a real Apple. Anyway, okay. So, where is your brother Abel? Now, that strikes rabbis as odd. That God can't find him, right? Therefore, they know there's something else going on here. Fine. What does Cain say? am I my brother's keeper, right? Hashomer achi anochi. Okay, what did he say before that? Everybody, that's a great question. Nobody ever knows. Okay, here's what makes the story even odder. He said, Lo yadati, I don't know. Why did he have to say, am I my brother's keeper altogether? God said, where's your brother? He said, I don't know. He probably said, I don't know and I don't care. It's your problem. But no, he said, I don't know. So why did he have to say, Hashomer achi anochi? He just abdicated personal responsibility. What more does he need to do? Again, something else is going on by adding that statement. So if we read it a little bit differently, maybe what he's saying is, Hashomer achi anochi, isn't God, I don't know where he is, but isn't God anochi, the shomer, the guardian of my brother? And if so, why is he dead? Now, lest you think I'm going off my rocker, off the deep end, there's a midrash that makes that exact point. The midrash on that verse says, Cain was like a thief caught stealing from the garden. And he's hauled before the magistrate, and he says, what are you prosecuting me for? I'm a thief. That's what I do. You should prosecute the gatekeeper. He left it open. It's a totally different thing. Elie Wiesel, in his book, Messengers of God, points to this, and you can imagine from Elie Wiesel's perspective, he said, Cain was pointing an accusatory finger at God. It's a totally different story than what you thought it was once we realize that Anochi means something totally different than just, am I my brother's keeper? Okay, next one. Noah. You remember him. So God decides it's time to destroy the earth. So he comes down and he speaks to John Houston. Anybody get that reference? Anybody know that reference, by the way? Does anybody know where John Houston, why I said Noah was John Houston? Okay. There's a wonderful movie. It's boring as all get out, but it is a great movie. It's called The Bible Part 1. There was never any other part because unfortunately John Houston made this movie in the 60s when biblical epics were the thing. You know, Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments. So he was going to do a movie of the whole Bible. Okay? It's fascinating because this is the text. This is the script for the movie. It literally quotes right out of the Bible. And anyway, Easy Rider came along. Everybody wasn't watching Bible movies anymore. So that went by the wayside. But he did do part 1, and he played Noah in the movie. So John Houston, I always have this picture of Noah in my mind as John Houston. Okay. So God comes down to John Houston and says, I'm going to destroy the world. Now watch the progression. He starts out by saying, Vayomer Elohim leNoach. God says to Noah, Kates kol basar ba lefanai. The end of the world has come to my attention. Ki malah haaretz chamas. Because there's just too much Hamas in this world. Hamas is violence. Too much violence in this world. Vehineni mashchitam et haaretz. And hineni, behold, I'm going to destroy the world. Now, what's interesting about this is, number one, there's no personal pronoun. Number two, you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know when it's going to happen, and you don't know who's going to do it. But you know it isn't good. Okay? Gets a little closer. God says to him, Ve'ani hineni mevi et hamabu mayim al haaretz. And I, behold, am going to bring this flood of water on the land to destroy all of the living beings. Now we have a personal pronoun. Now we know who's going to do it. Ani, hineni, and we know how it's going to be done. We don't know when it's going to be done, so it's still 120 years off, so we got a little time to build a boat. But aside from that, that's sort of the missing link. Now, interesting phrase, ani hineni. It only appears 3 times in the Torah, and when it appears, somebody drowns. So if you hear God say, ani hineni, get the life raft, it's time to go. So, Ani hineni, so now we know who's going to do it and we know what he's going to do. Then, chapter 7, verse 4. Ki liyamim od shiva, in another 7 days. Okay, Rashi says they were sitting shiva for Metushalach, but okay. Ki liyamim od shiva, anochi mamtir al haaretz. So watch that progression. When it was distant, no personal pronoun at all. Something's going to happen. It isn't going to be good. You're not going to like it, but it's going to happen. We get a little closer. We're 120 days out. I'm going to do it. It's going to be a flood, but I'm not telling you when. When we're 7 days out, Anochi Mamtir, God's essence, his deepest essence, is with us in the deepest time of trouble. Psalm 91, Imo Anochi B'tzara. I am with you in your time of trouble. Tzara is trouble. It's also related to Mitzrayim, which are straits, constrictions, things like that. Okay? God said, Anochi to Jacob, Anochi will go down with you to Egypt, and Anochi will come out with you from Egypt, he said. So Anochi is with us at those times in our life when we are in the deepest source of trouble. Anochi, God's essence, is still there. Okay, Avimelech. Who was Avimelech? Avimelech was an idol-worshipping Philistine king. Okay? Abraham, after he was done with Sodom and Gomorrah, or also known as the French Quarter during Mardi Gras, he left, and he's going to this place called Gerar. Gerar is where Avimelech is the king. He's a little worried, so he tells Sarah, tell them you're my sister. Because if you say you're my wife, they're going to kill me, they're going to take you, it's not going to be good, I'll have a very bad day. Please, tell him you are my sister. It'll be better. Okay, so she does, and he takes her. And then Avimelech has a dream. Now this is one of these things, I'm going to show you how the process of my writing the book, how I sort of got stumped, and then it was amazing what I found. So I'm reading Avimelech's dream, and Vayomer Elav, and God said to him, Elohim b'chalom, in a dream, Gam anochi yadati ki vatem levavcha asita zo. So Anochi came to Avimelech, the idol-worshipping Philistine king, in a dream, identifying himself with his deepest essence, Anochi. What am I supposed to make out of that? I have no idea. I'm just like learning this stuff. So I had nothing. I said, all right, keep reading. So that's what I did. I kept reading. And the very next instance of Anochi is a very famous one. Avimelech and Abraham are negotiating over wells and such. Avimelech says, these days we shake hands. Okay, then they swore to each other. Avimelech says, swear to me. Now, when Avimelech says, swear to me, ve'ata, and now, hishavali, swear to me, be'elohim hena, by God. Wasn't clear whose God he was talking about, but either way, it's a problem. Abraham can't swear to his God, and Abraham can't swear by Abraham's God to him. So Abraham's he's got a problem on his hands. He can't swear, but he can't not swear. Because if he doesn't have a deal, he has a war on his hands. So what does he say? We read it every year on Rosh Hashanah. And he says, brilliant formulation, Anochi Ishaveya. Now, Ishaveya in Hebrew means I swear, or I will swear. Okay, good enough. I swear, Ishaveya. Anochi Ishaveya means I swear. That double I, which occurs about 30 times in the Torah, always means something other than what it says. Okay? I swear is an odd formulation. What was he really saying? What he was saying was he was finding his way to reconcile having to deal in the world with an idol-worshipping secular Abimelech with his desire to be true to his God. He said, I swear to Anochi. Anochi Ishavea. I swear to Anochi, to God. He figures Abimelech won't know the difference. What's the difference? Okay, he's not Jewish. He doesn't know anything about this Anochi. So I'm just going to say Anochi. I swear to Anochi. He'll hear I swear. I will stay true to myself. And life will go on. Right? I'll tell you why I know that when I go to the next Anochi, but here's a little footnote. You're all familiar with the play The Merchant of Venice, right? And you all know Shylock, and you all know that Shylock said, if you prick us, do we not bleed, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But before he said that, do you know what else he said? To his non-Jewish business compatriots, he said, I will walk with you, I will talk with you, I will do business with you, but I will not eat with you, I will not drink with you, and I will not pray with you. Shakespeare had him say, Anochi Yishavea. I don't know if Shakespeare knew from Anochi Yishavea, but that's what he was saying. He was finding his way in a secular world to maintain his integrity and his truth to his God. That's what Abraham did. Now, how do I know that's what he did? How do I know he thought he was pulling the wool over Abimelech's eyes, and he didn't? Because now go to the very next use of Anochi in the Torah. Okay, they got a deal. They start arguing. Abraham says, your guys are stopping up all my wells. You got to tell them to cut that out. Abimelech says three things. Fascinating. He says, Lo yadati mi asar et davar hazeh. I don't know who did it. You say people are stopping up the well. I don't know anything about it. He also says, Lo higadatali, and you never told me anything about it. So in other words, I didn't know of it, and you never told me. Okay, you think that pretty much covers the universe. And then Abimelech says, Ve'anochi lo shamati bilti hayom. And I didn't know about this until today. Now, Anochi lo shamati is another one of those double I's. Lo shamati means I didn't hear about it. Anochi lo shamati is I didn't hear about it. Something else is going on. What's going on? It's completely redundant. He didn't need to say it all together. He just said lo yadati and lo higadatali. It's enough. And by the way, if he wanted to say lo shamati, why did he said lo yadati? He could have said lo shamati. What did he need anochi for altogether? Why is he throwing anochi into the middle of this? This is what ties all three of these together. Because Abimelech was saying to Abraham, listen, I don't know anything about these wells, but this anochi business, I never heard of it until today. It was a dream. It came in my dream. I thought, okay, it's a dream, big deal, it's a dream. Until today, I never heard anybody really say it. I didn't know it was real until today. It's another way to look at the story and how Abraham managed to work his way out of a mess. See, it's about 22. So, okay, fine. Let's do Joseph and his brothers. You all know the story. You've seen the play. You've heard the music. Okay. Joseph and his brothers, let's say, didn't exactly get along. They didn't see eye to eye at the beginning. Now, Joseph's father, Jacob, said, go look for your brothers. Subtext, I'm sick of having you around the house. Your ego is too big. Please, go look for your brothers. They'll know what to do. Okay. Joseph is out in the field. He encounters this unnamed man who says, Ma tevakesh. What are you looking for? What do you want? Now, the word bakesh in the Torah is almost always means something more than just I'm looking for something. It usually means I'm demanding something. I need something from the other. It's not just I'm looking. I need something. So Joseph says to this unnamed man, Et achai anochi mevakesh. I am looking for my brothers. Okay, fine. And at that level, and I never get rid of the literal level. The literal level is the literal level. It definitely. This is what What I'm operating on is sort of a subtext, sort of another story behind the story. So he is demanding something of his brothers. In fact, Anochi is demanding something of his brothers. Anochi being God's essence. So what was needed at this point? What was needed was for the brothers to forge a bond, to last through slavery, redemption, revelation, nation building. They would be together forever through dispersion, through partial destruction, and through the eventual redemption by the ultimate Messiah. That's what was needed. What did they get? Well, they threw him in a pit, sold him to roaming traders, dipped his coat in blood, and told his father he was dead. How do you bridge that gap between what we needed and what we got? Okay. What we need in order to bridge that gap is we need a leader, and we need for the brothers to become unified. Ultimately, that leader was who? No, it was Yehudah. Judah was ultimately the leader of the brothers, and ultimately the kingship came through Yehudah. And ultimately they had to come together. So how did they come together? First of all, we needed Yehudah to accept a little bit of personal responsibility. That is why the story of Judah and Tamar is interjected into the mix. Didn't make it into the play, into the musical, but there's not much musical you can do about, being with a prostitute and having a child, and okay, fine. So, but Anochi is used twice in that story. Judah is with his daughter-in-law that he thinks is a prostitute, and she says, what'll you pay me? And he says, Anochi will get a goat and bring it to you. I will go get a goat and bring it to you. But he uses Anochi. Okay, she says, fine, what do you give me for security? And he says the signet ring and the staff and the robe or whatever it is he gave her. Okay, fine. Then, time for payment. She's nowhere to be found. So he figures, okay, fine, she's gone. Then all of a sudden, Tamar appears, pregnant, and she is going to be killed for being a loose person. And as she's being called off, she doesn't say Judah did it. She says, see this signet ring and the staff and everything else? By these things, Anochi hara. By these things, I am pregnant. Her use of Anochi is directly back in Yehudah's face, in Judah's face, because only she and he know that code word passed between them. The signet ring, okay, fine, somebody could steal it or whatever. But he knew, and what she knew, and that was how it was transmitted, and Yehudah said she's right. Her case is just. She was not killed. The offspring of Tamar was Peretz. And as we know from the opening of the book of Ruth, Peretz was the progenitor of the house of David from which the ultimate Mashiach will come. Anochi was behind the scenes of that story, leading us to the kings of Israel. This is how Yehudah stepped up and became somebody who could accept personal responsibility. And we see that later on. When Reuven came, they were going to take, the brothers had to go down and get food because they were starving. So Joseph said, you got to bring me Benjamin. And Reuven goes to Jacob and says, okay, I'll bring Benjamin. And Jacob says, no. Yehudah says, I'll bring Benjamin. And Jacob says, okay. What was the difference? Two differences. Reuven, first of all, spoke to Jacob. Jacob had two names, Jacob and Israel. Jacob was his temporal, physical name. Israel was his spiritual name. Reuven spoke to Jacob. Yehudah spoke to Yisrael. Torah says very specifically, he spoke to Yisrael, not to Jacob. Number two, Yehudah said, Anochi Erevenu. Remember, here's another double I. Erevenu, I will be responsible. Anochi Erevenu, I will be responsible. Okay? I will be responsible. That word resonated with Yaakov. He was a successor to the Anochi tradition from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, actually all the way back to Adam. He knew what he meant. And he saw in Yehudah that connection, and then Yehuda could go. Now, so we have our leader, Yehuda. How did the brothers all come together? Here's something very interesting about this story. The story of when the brothers went down to Egypt breaks up into 3 sections, I think quite naturally. You can tell me if you don't agree, but the story first starts with the brothers, 10 of them, because Benjamin wasn't with them originally, and Joseph was already there. So there were 10 of them that go down to Egypt. That's the beginning of part 1, which ends when Shimon is thrown in prison. Simon, the brother, is thrown in prison. At that point, we have a commercial break. We can go get some beer and some pretzels and come back to the story. Right? It's a natural break in the story. Shimon's in prison. Okay, now we got to figure out what to do. Section 2. Shimon, from the time Shimon was in prison until Yehuda says, Anochi Erevenu, I stand up, I'm going to go get him. Another commercial break, because after that they're going to go back down to Egypt and get him. And then, of course, the third section, when he said, Anochi Erevenu, and then they come to the viceroy of Egypt, Big Joseph, and finally Joseph reveals himself. Okay, watch what happens in these 3 sections. In section 1, the word brother in its various formulations occurs 12 times. In section 2, the word brother in all its formulations occurs another 12 times. And in section 3, the word brother in its various formulations occurs 12 times. The subtext is telling us, I need those 12 brothers to get together until they finally do when Joseph reveals himself. Et achai anochi mevakesh. Anochi, God's essence, was looking for his brothers to get together. Now in the book I tell a story of 2 men, brothers, who were in business together. 2 brothers married 2 sisters. The children grew up in the same house. Sound familiar, Mom? The 2 brothers and the 2 sisters lived in the same house. One was upstairs, one was downstairs. The children lived together like brothers and sisters, not cousins, until something happened. One brother got upset at the other brother. They didn't speak for 25 years. Okay? Who doesn't have something like this in their family? Right? When we see these differences with each other, are they justified? Maybe. But God says, Et achai anochi mevakesh. I'm demanding something from my brothers. I, Anochi, God in his essence says, I demand something more of you than to allow for a family not to be able to sit Shiva in the same house, because this one won't talk to that one. Et achai anochi mevakesh. Okay, let's talk about hiddenness. There's a famous story. The Baal Shem Tov had a grandson, Rabbi Baruch. Rabbi Baruch had a grandson named Yechiel. Yechiel was out playing with his friends, and he comes in the house and he's crying to Rabbi Baruch, his grandfather. Rabbi Baruch says, why are you crying? Yechiel says, we were playing hide and seek, and my friends all ran away. They wouldn't look for me. Rabbi Baruch starts crying. Yechiel says, why are you crying? Rabbi Baruch says, that's how God feels. He's hiding, and we're not looking. The Torah tells us that God is hiding. Where does it tell us this? It tells us this in Devarim. In fact, it's Purim time. So the Talmud famously says, where is Esther in the Torah? So if you don't know, Esther, Mordechai, and Haman are all alluded to in the Torah. Okay, fine. Where is Esther in the Torah? Esther is in the book of Devarim, where it says, where God comes and says, you are all going to rebel against me, and I'm going to have all these terrible things befall you. And then he says, Ve'anochi astir haster espanai. And I will hide, and I will hide my face from you. There's a double hiddenness. I will be so hidden, you won't even know I'm hiding. That's how hidden I'm going to be. Okay? God is hiding and wanting us to seek him. The book explains that in more detail for the sake of time. I'm not going to get into all how we know verse 18 and why you need verse 18 when verse 16 and 17 say the same thing. And this is added for extra emphasis. But what I do want to point out is one thing about this hide and seek business. And that is Moses. When did God first speak to Moses? Okay, at the burning bush, right? Came to the burning bush. Now, burning bush is an interesting thing. Have you ever seen one of those gas fireplaces? You know, with the logs that are burning and not consumed? Sound familiar? Okay. You know how you have to really look to make sure they're not real logs? That was the level of concentration. It gives you an example. Moses had to really look to know that these logs were not being consumed. He had to pay attention. God wanted him to pay attention. But when did God actually speak to him? Vayar Adonai kisar lirot vayikra elav Elohim mitoch hasneh vayomer Moshe vayomer hineni. God didn't speak to Moses until he saw that Moses turned to see what was going on. When Moses was seeking God, then God said, now I'm ready to talk to you. Take your shoes off. Why do you have to take your shoes off? Because God said, you can stand on your own 2 feet. Okay? That's what I need you to do. In the famous example around Rosh Hashanah time, in the month of Elul, it's a month of introspection, right? The famous analogy is given that the king is in the field. I don't know if you ever heard that, the king is in the field. It's a famous Hasidic thought that God, as king, comes down into the field during the month of Elul so we can all relate to him and we can all really connect with him, recharge, and everything else. Okay? Now, every day in the month of Elul, we say Psalm 27. Here's how I know it's a game of hide and seek. God is out in the field. God says, "Oli, oli, outs and free." Isn't that what you say at the end of hide and seek, right? Oli, oli, outs, everybody come out, okay? Come out and meet the king in the field. How do I know that? Because read Psalm 27. Here's what it says. Al taster panecha mimeni. Don't hide yourself from me. Why are we saying don't hide yourself unless God said I'm going to hide myself? God is in the field saying, okay guys, look, we're playing this game of hide and seek. The deal is, I will hide, you seek. Every year I come, you don't seek. I want you to seek me. Now I'm going to go hide, and we say, no. Al taster panecha mimeni. Don't hide yourself from me. I want you here. And God says, Anochi haster es panai. I am going to hide my face from you. So now is the closing joke, story, joke/story. It's a true story, but it's sort of funny. I know it's a true story because it's in my baby book, so that means it's true. And the story is in nursery school, we had to draw what our parents did for a living. Actually, in those days, it was only fathers that did things for a living. Mothers didn't typically do things for a living, I guess. But in any event, I drew a picture of what my father did for a living. And so I drew a picture with a bunch of circles. And the teacher said, Paul, what exactly does your father do for a living? I said, my daddy's a doctor. He makes rounds. Words mean different things to different people depending on your level of interest and sophistication. So with that, I will leave you to the Anochi story. Thank you very much.
We have time for a few questions. If anyone has questions for Mr. Hamburger.
Who counted all the Anokis?
Who counted all of the Anokis? Okay, so how do you count? Well, there's a couple of different ways. In this era of technology, you can actually get Davka Writer, and you can just sit there, search and find. But I also checked it against what's called a concordance. A concordance is a book that was written, I don't know, when was it written? I don't know, 1,000 years ago? I don't know, way before computers. And the rabbis have this book. It's called the concordance, and it documents every use of every word in Tanakh and where it appears. And so you can double check it against the concordance. Concordance is a little harder to use than Davka Writer and Control F, but it's basically the same function. So yes, I counted, I checked, I double checked, but yeah.
You talk about the use of the word Anochi as God's essence, but in context, it's just the pronoun or the pronoun I, correct?
Correct.
But it's not all, the subject is not always God.
Ah, good. So the subject is not always God. In fact, when Bilam's donkey says Anochi, it probably wasn't God. Okay, so yes, you're right. It isn't always God. Now, if I have a Grateful Dead tie, okay? A Grateful Dead, from the Grateful Dead they make ties, or a Mickey Mouse tie. Let's say a Mickey Mouse tie. Everyone knows. Okay, there's the manufacturer of the tie is sending a message through the tie. Whatever the message is, peace, love, war, I don't know. But there's some message on the tie. If I wear the tie, am I articulating the message? Even if I'm not saying, I want this message, maybe I just like the tie, it's a nice design, I'm wearing it. Okay? I'm conveying the message whether I know it or not, and whether I like it or not, and whether I want to or not. By wearing the tie, I'm doing it. So when they say Anochi and it isn't God, they're conveying Anochi as God's essence because it's God's signature in the Torah to let you know, I'm here. So they are conveying it in the same way that I'm conveying it when I wear a particular garment with a particular message on it, and maybe I mean the message. Maybe I want to say, make, peace, not war.
So you're saying that each time in the Tanakh when the word Anochi is used, regardless of who's saying it, your research has indicated that it elevates the meaning of whatever that subject is to not necessarily whatever the interpreted meaning by scholars. It's you're saying it elevates it to a God's essence.
The literal text, the pshat level or the literal text is there.
Right.
I'm not denying
Right.
any of that meaning. There are 600,000 interpretations to every word in Torah. Okay? That's why in the Torah, in the prayers, we say, "V'tein chalkenu b'toratecha." Give me your share of the Torah. In the Talmud, it says, it is impossible, we're in a Beit Midrash, right? It's impossible for there to be a Beit Midrash without a Chiddush, without a new thing, a new idea. Now, it also says that God studied Torah for 3 hours a day. God studies Torah, his Torah, the one he wrote, for 3 hours a day for eternity. Now, I wrote that book. I can tell you, I'm not going to study it 3 hours a day every day for eternity, okay? I'd get a little bored. So how does God not get bored? Because in all these Beit Midrash, there are all these new Chidushim. God didn't write them all down. God left for us to find them. This is one of those Chidushim that God can study, and it'll take another hour, but okay. That's what it is. So the meaning is there. And this other meaning is there, and sometimes, quickly, I'll just tell you, like in the book of Devarim. Book of Devarim is very challenging from an Anochi expert perspective. Why? Because it keeps saying Anochi mitzavcha, Anochi mitzaveh, Anochi mitzavcha. How do you get something new out of each and every one of those, right? I struggled with that for a while. And then I realized a couple of things. Number one, the phrase Anochi mitzavcha, or its variants, with one exception, only occurs in the book of Devarim. Anochi commanding you, that's how we connect to God, is through the mitzvot. Anochi mitzavcha, God says, I am commanding you to observe the mitzvot. The one exception was in Kitisa, if you were paying attention to last week's Torah portion. But in any event, Anochi mitzavcha appears over and over again. What am I going to make out of this? Then I realized a couple of things. First of all, the phrase Anochi met, I am going to die, occurs 5 times in the Torah. I won't get into all of them, but I'll just focus on one of them. Moses says, Anochi met. I am going to die. Now, he literally was going to die, so that part is true. What's the Anochi met part of it? The aspect of God. Remember, who is God? He's all of those things. That aspect of God that was needed to sustain us while Moses was the leader was going to die in the sense of be diminished relative to another aspect of God that we would need when we take over the land of Israel and go on into the future. So how do we stay connected? Oh, and by the way, the same Torah that says Anochi met in Devarim also says Chai Anochi Leolam. I will live forever. So Anochi's going to live forever, but Anochi's going to die. How do you reconcile those two things? We stay connected to Anochi through Anochi Mitzavcha. Now, here's what's interesting. The book of Deuteronomy takes place over 37 days. It begins on the first day of Shvat, and it ends when Moses dies on the 7th day of Adar. 37 days. Okay? The phrase Anochi Mitzavcha, as it turns out, occurs 37 times in the book of Deuteronomy, as if the Torah is reminding us that, yes, Anochi will die, but Anochi will live forever. Why? Because you will observe, I want you for every day of Moses' last life in the 37 final days, I want you to observe the commandments. I'm saying it over and over again. One a day for every one of the last 37 days of Moses' life. I want you to remember this. Anochi Mitzavcha, Anochi will stay connected to you.
I am not a rabbi, and I'm not, matter of fact, I did what your daddy did, and was a very friend of us. I love him, and we were friends. But isn't that some people would say, Ani has the same letters as Ein.
Correct.
If you use
As
Ani, that means I'm nothing.
I'm nothing.
I'm nothing. Could it be that, I'm asking you, I'm not interpreting.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that the word Anochi has been used to replace Ein and Ani?
Correct. So, what's the difference? So, Ani has the letters of Ein, or nothingness. Anochi has this extra chaf in it. Okay. Now, you actually touched on something that the rabbis have latched onto, and particularly in Hasidic thought, they've latched onto this. Ani refers to the more humble aspect of I, because it has that aspect of being related to nothingness. Okay? And we see that, and the illustration they give for that is twofold. Number one, when Shmuel said, Anochi haroeh, which isn't in, it actually, there is a footnote in my book on this. It's not in the Torah, but I covered it anyway. Okay. Shmuel says, Anochi haroeh. I am the seer. Seer, S-E-E-R. I am the, okay? Rashi says he was punished by elevating himself. In fact, God said, oh, you're so smart, you can't even pick King David out of the lineup. Okay? You couldn't pick him out of a room of one. That's how knowledgeable you are. Okay? So he was punished for saying Anochi. Why? Because he elevated himself. Whereas in Psalms, King David says, Ani tefillah. I am prayer. I am humble. He approached God with humility. So the archetype of humility is Ani tefillah. And Anochi, Anochi is the elevated sense of I. So that's why when it's used, if it's used inappropriately to elevate yourself, it's almost like I'm highfalutin, I'm standing over you, I, kind of a thing. But it absolutely has that connotation. And that's how it's sort of reconciled. That's how you can see in some places, and why you can ask yourself in some places, wait a minute, why did he say Anochi, not Ani? Why did he say that? That conundrum is what causes commentators to say, why did he do that? Or why did he say Ani and not Anochi? But those are the linguistic dynamics that people struggle with, and that's why a lot of those are captured, and that's what we try to analyze.
Any last questions? Please.
It just seems that any translation of the Hebrew Bible would be impossible with what you just said.
Well, okay, that's true. Any translation of the Hebrew Bible would be impossible based on what I just said. Now, you're right, and the reason is because Hebrew is such a rich language, particularly in the Torah, because we have layers of allusions. That's what I said when the understanding is there's 600,000 interpretations to every word in Torah. So it's all there. We just have to, hop around and figure it out, okay? So, it's there. We just have to do it. So how do we figure this out? But you're right, a translation is totally inadequate because English or French or Spanish or whatever. The Greek, right.
Like way back.
And every translation is an interpretation.
No wonder we have trouble.
Correct. every translation is an interpretation. That's really what it is.
Well, please join me in
Great.
thanking Paul one more time.
Thank you.
Please stick around if you want to snooze a little bit. There's drinks, there's snacks, there's still books in the back, so help yourself, please.
Paul Hamburger, you'll have to ask my mom. It's right there. I don't know, I'm pretty bad at the, take this.
Yes.
Actually,